Takes a second. Okay, here we go. I think we're recording. Um, cool. Very excited to be here. This is our sixth conversation interview podcast episode. Again, that word doesn't really roll off my tongue easily. I don't know. Podcasts is just such a weird term nowadays. But it's conversation number six and the last one for this year, and very excited about it. Our guest here is Alan Keane, who has background in writing, producing, you name it. He's going to tell us a little bit more about it. We have been in touch for a few years now, and we've spent a little bit of time together, and I think have a good rapport and connected on a lot of different things. So this is why when I was kind of coming up with the list of people, you were really there up top at the top of the list. Again, want to mention for those who will be listening to this later that again, this is recorded live. There's going to be no edits to this, no augmentation, exactly
Uh-oh.
as is. Uh-oh, yeah, take care.
Uh-oh.
Because,
It's on the internet now.
Yeah, and we're doing this live within our Toon Room community. Every member of the community is welcome to participate during the recording, which is a kind of a unique thing for these sorts of podcasts. I did it.
Yeah.
And yeah, let's get into it.
Great.
So Alan,
Well, thank you very much
welcome.
for having me, Alex. It's a real pleasure as a colleague and a fellow animation professional. I have to say I'm really impressed with your idea behind the Toon Room. I think it's a good thing, and I think it will gradually catch fire. It's like you said, Annecy in your pocket's a great way of pitching it. And it's a good way for people to meet outside the normal traditional conference. Again, it's year round. So yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah. Thank you for being here. So, there's a lot of I'm not kind of in the business of competing with other animation podcasts per se, but that wasn't my intention. I just want to kind of have cool conversations with cool people. But and there's a lot of really cool industry stuff out there, and people who are way smarter than me, talking about things that even I don't fully comprehend or really want to dive that deep into. So I thought that for these conversations, we would really focus not so much on the industry, and now there's a lot to talk about, right?
There certainly is,
and mergers and crises and so on, and the kind of complicated situation we're all in. But there's other people doing that, and I thought that it would be more useful and also inspiring for the members of the community or anybody listening to this at a later time to kind of hear about these very unique stories, personal stories, because everybody's story is different. There's not two stories that are the same, two people that have had exactly the same career path, exactly the same motivations, exactly the same start, exactly the same inflection points where they needed to pivot or change things and so on. And I think that to me also personally, the humanity of it all is way more interesting than talking about, prognosis. So,
and personal stories are always way better than sort of analysis of the marketplace. And I think they resonate better with people. Everyone wants to know how people do what they do.
Yeah, exactly. So this is kind of the moment where I pass on the baton. And I shut up, and then you do the rest of the talking for the rest of the hour.
Okay.
But basically, it would be cool to sort of start as far back as you're comfortable with, and it would be interesting to know what got you into the industry in the first place, and how you got your start, and what were the very first hopes that were crushed.
Oh wow! I kind of blot them out. I think it's one of the reasons I've survived it. I think you almost have to have an anesthesia towards the rejection, because there's a lot of it, and you need to be resilient. But yeah, I think it does. I mean, for most of the people who I know that are sort of relatively kind of successful and pulled off being a professional, which is hard in itself. There's obviously talent is one big thing, but the other thing is that sort of resilience and desire, and that comes from somewhere that where in someone's story do they make a really odd and outlier decision to go, do you know what, I want to tell stories for a living, or I want to make
Yeah.
films, or I want to be an animator. And for me, when I was younger, I was always very interested in art. I was just a prolific drawer and sketcher. I made my own comic books, which I used to chuckle away at hilariously to myself. I still laugh. And they probably weren't that good, but it was like I got such a kick out of
But
it. I
hey,
got really
as long as you're cracking yourself up,
well, man, that's you
you
got to start with
you
that.
had
You know, you're their
yeah, you
first
had
audience. You
an
know,
audience of one, exactly, yourself. Perfect.
you're your
Yeah.
first audience, and I think if you like what you're doing and you're enjoying it, then you're onto something. Um, I kind of made the error, I think, when I was about 16, where I was going to be choosing what subjects I was going to be doing, and I wanted to do art A level. But that whole sort of classic argument came up of like, do you want to be an artist? Do you want to be poor for the rest of your life? You know, you're academically proficient, you're smart. You know, why would you choose something like that? It's, you know, it's not going to pay your bills. I mean, that was the sort of the background I came from. So I stopped drawing, and I did my A levels in sort of sciences and English, and then I went to university to study psychology. And I found out very quickly, I was like, I don't want to be a psychologist at all, but I do find the human mind fascinating.
Yeah.
So I've always had a big interest in human behavior, and why people are the way they are, which I think feeds into a lot of the work that I do. It was then after
I think
that,
that's a great combo.
yeah, I would.
Wonderful combo.
It's also just very interesting. I think everyone should sort of know at least the basics, because you kind of get to
Yes,
understand
I agree.
yourself. And after university, I kind of decided I want to get into screenwriting somehow. I worked as a runner on some short films. None of it really led anywhere. It was all essentially work for free on projects that really sort of didn't amount to too much. But you get to see people working and doing it. But that's when I decided I wanted to do a screenwriting master's. So I moved back to Ireland, where I'm originally from, and I lived in the UK for about 16 years. So I moved back to Ireland, and I did a screenwriting master's at NUIG, that's National University of Ireland, Galway. And I kind of was two students at the end of the master's year who got a scholarship to UCLA Film School. And I was one of the lucky recipients of one of those two scholarships. So I kind of moved out to LA with just a few bucks in my back pocket. I managed to get myself. I moved in with some really young, sort of teens, late teens, into a frat house. It was the cheapest place I could live, and I studied the screenwriting program, the professional screenwriting program, which is great, because people see UCLA and see all of a sudden it's like, well, okay, I'm interested. So it does help sometimes to have should we say, a study background in things. People take you more seriously if you spend time doing it.
Of course.
And I found my master's degree was very interesting, but it really was time out of regular life to spend writing, which is great, because any professional writer will tell you there's that crossover between having a full-time job and being able to write, and then figure out how the hell do I move from one thing to another.
I'm just curious, how old were you when you were living in the frat house? Just
I was at this point I was 26, I think, so it's quite a lot older,
quite a bit of a difference. And in terms of sitting down and writing, we it makes a lot of sense. We were talking with Rita last week, and she had a mentor at one point, and they were telling her, you need to spend time writing. Whatever you find the time, you need to sit down and spend time.
No, it's hard to tell. Yeah, you really need to chain yourself to that desk.
You need to get the hour. You need to get the hours in. And their argument was that you need to put the hours in to get all the crap out.
Well, that is so true. It's like I use the tap analogy. It's an old tap that you have to turn it and let the dirty brown water run through.
The stale water in the pipes.
I also realized that, writing is rewriting. It's like getting something down the page, even if it's shit, and it frequently will be. It's like taking a good clean look at it and going, okay, how can I make this better? So forgiving yourself the early first draft and saying, well done, you've started. That's the hardest part, you've started. And after that, it's the rigor and the discipline of figuring out what you can, the humility to go, okay, that's not good. I know I can make it better. What do I do? How do I
Yeah,
think
what
about
can
it?
it turn and what can it turn into, right?
Yeah, exactly. I
Um,
mean,
I think, yeah, I
mm,
think Jerry Seinfeld published a book relatively recently, might have been last year, 2 years ago, something like that. And I think the title of the book is this anything? Or something to that effect, which I think is brilliant because it's not dissimilar to writing a joke because that needs to be so carefully structured, right? The setup and
yeah,
then the punchline and the wording of it needs to be just spot on for it to work. So people who don't really know much about comedy, let's say, they don't understand the really the craft that goes into that, right?
yes, yes.
Um, and it's because
And
it
that
seems
craft
also so
kind of
so
doesn't come out of the
casual.
ether.
Yeah,
It has to be worked on.
so casual and so easy when they say it
Mm.
and so on, blah 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 blah.
Oh yeah,
But it's many iterations. So you kind of come up with something and you go, "Is this anything? Is there something here? You know, or there's something. Okay, let's see what it can turn to." And then you polish it, and then what it ends up being might be quite far removed from what you
well,
initially
that's the thing.
intended.
You
So
have to open yourself up to the process and open yourself up to left turns, inspiration.
yeah,
You, yeah, you really do. And the vulnerability involved in doing that is in like you gotta,
yes,
yeah. Is it anything? One of the I think the big kind of breakthroughs for me in my writing because I was very reluctant to show it to people for years until I had to.
yeah,
Was when I started to show it to people whose opinions I felt were brilliant. They were constructive, they mattered, they had patience with me, and were able to give me
yeah,
really good advice. And it kind of builds your confidence. It allows you to realign your nose, your instincts, and trust them more. And you learn just these brilliant gems of information and craft that can give you a kind of a fresh pair of eyes on something that you might think you can't fix, but you can. But yeah, I suppose, and the more you do it, the better you get at it. Is the idea. Um, so it is really important. It's a collaborative medium. You're not writing a novel on your own. Even novelists have
hmm,
editors. But
yes,
it is such a collaborative medium, particularly animation, because essentially you're handing over a blueprint, and that's what it is, for
yeah,
someone else to come along and then lavish and layer their talent and interpretation onto it.
yeah, yeah, totally, yeah. This it's even I think that's a great point regarding solo quote unquote solo writers. Even they have an editor, right?
Yeah.
Because
I mean, some of them mightn't
there's
like them, some of them mightn't even need them, but it's important, I think,
yeah,
to
there's
it
always a
is an audience-driven
team.
medium.
Yeah, there's
A
always
novel
a
can
team
exist
behind
without
the
anyone
scenes that
needing it. It can exist. You
yeah,
can say that's mine. It's my world entirely. No one else gets involved. I wrote that.
yeah,
Screenwriting is different. It's kind of this. You're laying the foundation work for all of these other artists to come on board, whether it's live action or animation. And yeah, it's so you kind of have to. Your work has to translate, and you can get better at kind of like I said, writing the joke the right way so they can see it. So you
yeah,
find even really clear ways of like going, okay, here's my idea, and I know I got to sell it to them. So I almost like when I started writing for board artists, I noticed
yeah,
my writing really improved because the next person who came along was really enthused by being given something interesting to do, rather than something sort
yeah.
of by the book and mundane and obvious.
Yeah, and also there's a back and forth there, right? When you're
Of course,
writing
yeah. Ideally, yeah.
script,
Rather than
yeah,
thanks for the script, see you later.
yeah,
And
yeah. When
then you watch, you
writing
go,
a
who wrote
script,
that?
yeah, or a screenplay. I mean, there's different kinds of setups, I suppose, in different
Of
situations, but
course, yeah,
ideally, there's a back and forth, and obviously in the script you want to be as clear as possible and kind of leave little room for an interpretation in terms of like, did they mean this or did they mean that?
yeah,
But still leave enough room for
yeah. For
somebody
them
else's
to pull it off and be
creativity
enthusiastic
and
about it.
a little bit
Yeah,
of space for maneuvers and so on. And ideally, kind of go back and forth a little bit and sort of build it up together, which is again quite unique, I think,
mm,
and specifically for animation, where you're building everything literally from scratch.
yeah. Which I love.
Right?
I love the fact that I have friends in working in live action, and there's so much more fantastical, weird, wonderful, imaginative. It's a much more fertile playground, I think, for real sort of real out there creativity. And there's
Yeah,
certainly more opportunity for that.
yeah.
But yeah, I initially
I
I sort of wanted to become a live action writer, and
same.
that's what my training
Yeah,
was in. And that's what the screenwriting program was. And I kind of fell into animation, which I, by the way, I always loved. Was a massive fan of animation growing up. Was when I landed a job. It was a BBC show made in Ireland. It was a live action animation combination show where the main character was an animated character called Roy, and he was the only animated boy in the whole world, and he was badly drawn, which kind of made him quite endearing. And that was my first sort of big break, and where I got my first sort of produced credits, and I was script editor and writer on that series. And it was great. It was obviously I understood the underlying principles of live action, but then picked up the animation while working on it, which was very.
Was this a long time after LA?
It was I think it was about 2 years after. I very nearly ended up getting a job as a writer's assistant on a very big budget science fiction TV show for FX. That was greenlit. I'd moved back to Ireland and was waiting to move back to LA to start my life as a writer in LA. And they cancelled it. They literally cancelled it before it started. They paid out all the contracts for the actors and everything because it was such a big budget. And they launched 3 reality TV shows instead because they figured out, hey, man, we can make this stuff.
More bang for their buck. Yeah.
We can make these 3 shows and get the same revenues from advertising. It was kind of around about the time that reality TV show really started to take a hold. And here we are. We call it reality. It's kind of questionable, but I'm not a huge fan of those shows, and it's not because of that. So I went to work in London for Tiger Aspect on a show for the BBC, Robin Hood live action show with Dominic Minghella. Lovely man. He's brother of Anthony Minghella. Really wonderful writer, lovely boss. And then when that finished, I moved back to Ireland. I worked for the broadcaster in the drama department in sort of commissioning, which is interesting. I got to see the hunter versus gamekeeper dynamic. And out of that, I got the job on Roy through the BBC, which went on to win a Royal Television Society Award and a BAFTA. So that was really kind of a lot of luck. A lot of luck. And that was back in, I think, 2009, I think, or maybe 2008. I was unemployed for a year after that because of the global financial crisis happened. So I made lots of short films with friends. And then I got the Roy job. No, and then that was my first animation job. And then on the back of that, Aardman were looking for script editors for a new show. I put my CV in, and I moved to Bristol literally right after getting married. So I, for the first time, anyway, the plot thing. So I moved to Aardman, and then that's when really, animation became probably my mainstay of career. I mean,
Did you find it any different or any more challenging in a different way writing for stop motion than any other medium, for example?
Well, it wasn't stop motion, but it is slightly different. I think, like I said, you have to conjure more out of nothing because the world you're frequently talking about doesn't exist. So you have to write the tone of the world into the writing. So the tone comes across in the writing. Whereas when you're writing something real, the less effort is required in that regard. You're just describing something that people can literally draw the archetype of, well, oh, it's got a chair, it's a room, it's dark, and it's noir, all those things in live action. You can set very easy. Whereas if you're writing a TV show about crazy little robot animals that come to life from the future, then tone is even more important in animation. So people can actually feel the show, and every animated show has its own sort of unique tone. I think the great ones do indeed.
Yeah, for sure. So that was your first experience working on on a proper production.
Roy was. Yeah, it was great.
More,
it was really
extended period of time.
Well, both jobs were for over a year, so it was a really good, like full time in a professional environment, learning off all of these really brilliantly talented people. I have to say that the people who I found worked in animation were just generally nicer. It's true, call me a liar. Not that we don't have our share of arseholes. every industry has the troublesome types, and every industry, I think, has a tendency to, I think, coddle creative people and potentially even make monsters out of them. ego is the thing that fuels creativity, but also can kind of consume you as a human being and make you a difficult
Yeah,
person to be around or
yeah,
even to
for
work
sure.
with. But by and large, yeah, animation, it's humbling. You walk into a studio and you see all of these incredibly talented people doing things you never in a million years could think yourself capable of, and you have nothing but respect for them. It's a much more humbling
Hmm.
process, and as a result, everyone needs to. There can be very few weak links in animation, whereas I think sometimes in live action, you can get through the weak links. That the talent is less apparent than, say, working in a studio full of talented artists and animators.
Yeah, I think it's harder to fake as well.
Well, that's it. You can't
Um,
blag it.
you know,
You get
you
found out
can't.
very quickly.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So I never
exactly.
drew for them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can either do it. You can't really phone it in. So it's really
No.
hard.
No.
It's really hard to be all ego and no talent, right?
Yeah.
Whereas in live action, there's different ways and that you can sort of get away with it.
You can. Yeah.
Uh,
You don't. Yeah. There's like. Well, I think. Yeah. You can fake it a bit more. I think we can all think of a few
yeah,
people going, "How have they got a job?"
yeah.
Hey, but
Um,
it's a tough
And
business.
generally speaking, also maybe I don't know. What do you think? Maybe it's the fact that in animation everything takes at least up until now. We'll see how things will shift as we
Yeah.
move along in a couple of years, but things take a long time, right? So
Yeah.
I think the fact that the process is the way it is humbling in and of itself.
Oh, it is.
I
Yeah.
remember
Yeah.
some of the first projects that I ever did in animation. I have a similar background in that I was interested in live action, and I wanted to write and direct, live action stuff. And
Mhm.
ideally, the peak of my career, the way I envisioned it, is I'll be directing live action features,
Mm.
right? That's what I wanted to do. But then eventually we kind of got into animation. I had my own little studio, and we are doing these things, and you're bumping against it and learning as we go because we didn't go to school for this. Um, and bumping into the regular kind of hurdles of having to deal with render, for
Mm.
example, not having enough computing power and getting all sorts of glitches, and then having to re-render things, and then
Mm.
having to do some other things, or waiting to until you draw the animatic properly and things like that. And for me, at least, it was a really painful but really
Mm.
good lesson in patience.
Yeah.
And that these things take time, and there's no amount of agony, internal strife is going to accelerate the process or make
No,
it
it's
go
not. No,
quicker,
exactly. You have to
or
kind of
make the
accept it.
project
Yeah.
successful overnight or whatever. You don't
Yeah.
know, and you can't really force or accelerate these things. So you just have to do the
Yeah.
things. You have to just
I
go
come
through the
across
steps, right?
a great phrase to explain the differences that in animation the car crash happens in slow motion.
Yeah.
You have time to course correct. Of course, it's very labor intensive and expensive, and the more planning and the more things you get
Yes.
right, the better. But yeah, with live action, it's all over and done very very quickly.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Um,
Which is, I think I hope it doesn't sound like we are um, putting this in a light where one is better than the other or
Oh
anything like
no,
that.
no,
It's
no, no,
just
no. There's pros and
completely
cons to
different
either. But there are definitely nice people in animation.
completely different
There's lovely
different
people in live action too. But yeah,
yeah, completely different mediums. But I would say that if I had to choose, number one, if I had to choose to hang out with people just to hang
mm,
out, I would probably choose animation people
mm,
any day of the week. And what is also cool about animation is this course correction thing. I think is a great thought, notion, and good, funny saying. Because oftentimes in live action, and I've had this experience where you only kind of understand what sort of piece you are doing once it's in the can already, once it's
yeah.
done.
Once
And
you
maybe
start to
you
assemble it, yeah,
yeah,
reshoots.
and maybe you have your first draft edit, and maybe even then you're kind of still piecing it together and kind of go. So that's really when it gets its rhythm and it gets its pace, when it gets its kind of
Mm,
soul into it a little bit, and you kind of go, aha, And whereas with animation, there's much more prep that goes in. There's,
Yeah,
there's
no, and I
animatics, there's boards, there's
that
it's a
prep
different
should
it's a
be
different logic.
used in live action. I think sometimes live action has a
Yes.
tendency to go, okay, we'll shoot the wide, we'll get the coverage, we'll do a couple over the shoulders or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
prep, like even sort of half an hour's prep, even like I'd be a big fan of anything I work on now if I can get it pre-visualized or boarded to really find to find,
Yeah.
because then the time you spend shooting, which is incredibly expensive, like in terms of overheads,
And
live action burns
stressful
money
and
faster, more quickly, and more intensely.
yes.
You should be planning more. You should be planning as much as animation. But
Yeah.
animation, by its very nature, has to be planned because you're building it from
Yeah.
nothing. Um,
And there's tools out there for live action. There's a lot of tools and companies. I've stumbled. I can't name off the top of my head any companies right now. Maybe you can, but I've seen businesses that specialize in creating animatics for live action
mm.
projects. Um, so it's sort of like an animation business, but
It is, yeah. I think
their
more and
niche is
more, yeah,
working with
as
live action directors and visualizing and moving the cameras and
yeah,
doing the setups and everything, so they can do as much proper planning beforehand and
yeah.
prep
And
as they
look,
can.
that's just one way of doing it. Some people, like Clint Eastwood, for example, reads a script, goes in, blocks it out, shoots
One
it, gets
take.
it 2 takes. That's
Yeah.
intuition, pure 100% unadulterated intuition from decades of working with some
Yeah.
of the greatest
Yeah.
filmmakers of our time. So there are many ways, but I would be, yeah, planning is great. Planning is like it should we say decreases the risk of car crash, whether it's speeded up
Yeah.
one or one in slow motion.
Yeah. Maybe one last thing that I'll say on this particular subject, and then we can move on, is that what I've discovered for myself as well early on is like the power of the creative exercise, because there's so many things that you have to come up with, right? Everything, literally, and you're building everything from scratch. That I think that any young director, and especially now, tools are already way more available, and people are easier to find if you want to find an
Mm.
animator for that. But I think for any young director, doing at least one or two, be it small animation projects, is
Mm.
very good exercise. Again,
Oh,
speaking of working
couldn't
out.
agree more. I think it's a
Again,
great.
speaking of working out, even if
Mm.
it's for nothing, maybe it'll end up being a festival piece. You send out a few
Well,
festivals.
it's
You
just
see what
it's
happens.
practice. It's practice, and
But it's
practice is
amazing,
humbling.
exactly. But it's amazing creative practice, because you
Mm.
literally have to think. It's not like, oh, we need a street, let's go scout some locations.
Mm.
Oh, we need a cafe, let's go scout
Mm.
some locations, and maybe augment it and you set dress it a little bit, and maybe have a production designer and
Mm.
a prop master that bring you some stuff and kind of make it your own. But you're still starting with something that is already there. Whereas an animation is kind of everything. Like, what do I want that street to look
Yeah,
like?
no, it
What do
is.
I want that
Like
cafe to look like? And it's
it's
really
magical.
in that sense is the most powerful exercise that
Yeah,
you can
I'd argue that sort
do
of
as a
bigger budget, sort of should we say effects heavy, fantastical films, while they might be live action, have probably a lot more in common in some ways with animation
yeah.
from a world building perspective.
Yeah,
You know,
because a lot of it is augmented, right?
yeah, exactly.
It's
It has
not
to
it's at
be a
actual
version of itself.
locations. It's yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
I think if you look at something like Marvel, for example, I know that their approach would be to almost pre-visualize and pre-board everything in advance.
yes.
And a lot of the
It's so
directors,
text heavy.
yeah, they
Yeah.
bring in sort of really exciting sort of lower mid-tier directors who are on a career trajectory, and then throw like a 250 million budget at them, and then say, here's what we
Yeah.
want, and they kind of stick to that because they're frightened to deviate from such
Yeah.
a kind of a leviathan. I mean, they did very well. I actually briefly worked for them while I was in LA, which is kind of another interesting little aside.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
For Marvel?
yeah, I was around about the time that it's 2000, I think, 6 or 7. I can forget now. I'm terrible with dates.
Mm-hmm.
They just had been financed as their own studio. I think the first
Right.
Fantastic Four film had come out when I joined them, and I sort of was interning there. I was like the oldest intern there. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, they were yeah, that was right at the precipice, and they were, yeah, I was putting together their comic library. They'd send me off, so they'd be doing sort of research and say Captain America. I get like 20 years worth of Captain America comics and read them all, and
Mm-hmm.
then put
Mm-hmm.
little post-it notes or tags where there's some really interesting visual sequences, so they could kind of pull them out and extract them. So they're really, really looking to pull from,
Oh,
and a lot of that stuff ends up on screen, you know.
yeah, like little Easter eggs, little things from past comics
Yeah,
and
just
things like that.
really interesting kind of hero specific action
Yeah,
moments or something really unique.
that
Uh,
proper
that they,
fans really appreciate.
but exactly, but also because it's essentially it works at that level, like elevate it, pull it out, and put it into the context of the live action film, and not only are you paying
Yeah,
homage, you're actually kind of taking the best work that those artists and writers put together, and kind of putting it together into a framework. So that was very interesting as well, working with them, because they, for like it or not, they changed the movie business, uh, for better or worse. I'll let you decide.
yeah, yeah. Let's not get into that. Let's continue.
Mm,
Let's continue where we left off. So,
mm.
um, how how long you said did you spend? How much time did you spend at Aardman? And it was probably like a per project thing,
It
right? You
was.
weren't.
I think it's all in all. It was about 2 years. It's the first year I was in Bristol, commuting back and
Hmm.
forth every weekend from Ireland, and I made some lovely friends there. Um, and then, yeah, when the producer left, my contract finished. The producer left to take on a new
Hmm.
job, because I had sort of great relationships with our studio partners in Spain and South Korea, and I had intimate knowledge of the show, having sort of written and story edited. They said, "Do you want to take over producing?" And I did, and so I got my first sort of proper producer credit, finishing up production for Aardman
How
on
yeah,
Canimals.
how did that feel? I mean, that's kind of where the transition from writing to producing took
Yes,
place,
yeah,
sort
I
of
could say officially that,
finalized, right?
yeah, when I became sort
Yeah,
of a production absorbed writer, and it helps when you're in a studio. Like most writers nowadays, we're kind of out in some sort of Zoom room somewhere in abstract space
yeah,
until they need us, and we don't really get to see the processes, how they work. And I think seeing processes and how they work actually makes you a better writer, because you kind of can
yeah,
write to the strengths of the
yeah.
process, and
So
you
I
can write around the problems.
yeah, I probably know, knowing you a little bit, I probably know the answer to this question, but I'm
Mhm.
gonna ask it anyway. Was it an uncomfortable place to be? Would you have preferred to just focus more on writing, or were you really
No, I
curious
suppose.
about other
I mean,
aspects of the
no, I mean, I was, like I said, I'm a team player,
process? Yeah,
and it's like, as a writer, yeah, it's good to be part of a process where you see, the writing come to fruition, how it's executed. Um, yeah, we just deliver scripts, the ideas, whatever, but like there's so much more that happens afterwards, and they're all as equally as important as each other. So it was great from the point of view of getting further experience, um, and seeing how everyone who comes on adds the layer, or how they interpret, or how they execute, where the writing comes from. It really, I think it's a great exercise. And if you look at sort of the golden age of television, for example, live action in America, it's very much writer producer
hmm,
led, and I think there's a reason why
yeah,
what came out of it was so good, because writers weren't just, "Thanks for the script, we'll see you later," where bye bye, which I think a lot of
yeah,
us writers are probably familiar with. We are a vital and important part of the process, and it isn't just a case of
yeah,
"Thanks for that, I'll
yeah,
take it from here, goodbye."
yeah, yeah. And if that is the case, more often than not, what ends up being delivered at the end is not really what came in, right?
Not
Because
not
again,
always. No, I mean, you have to have happy
it's a team
actors.
sport. There's a lot of many people involved. There's a lot of people who kind of have their
Totally,
say and
yeah.
so on. So
Mm,
you have that. You should have that freedom, like we talked about earlier, to
mm.
kind of let people add on to it and so on and so forth. But also sometimes if you completely remove the initial writer of the piece from the process, then
Mm.
it can morph a little bit, and I don't know,
Yeah, it can become
avoid.
broken and terrible. It can
Yeah,
become better. It can become any one of those things. But
yeah,
by and large, if that process isn't sort of respecting of the initial intention, then it's you may as well just write it yourself and stop wasting the other person's time and disappointing them. But at the same time, sometimes in the process of writing, things get changed, and those decisions are in the best interest of what the idea is and what it has to be realized. Like for example,
yeah.
when I worked on Gumball for a good few years, and that was a really fantastic experience, just to see how. And then we had like writers' rooms with writers in the room working at various stages of scripting, and then to see what happened at every stage from sort of the animatic onwards. You'd see you'd recognize your work, but you'd recognize your work getting better, getting tighter, finding new ways to
Hmm.
execute a good idea. And because it's very much a team sport, it's kind of easier to let go
Yeah,
of those things, because you see essentially you're providing ammunition for this highly talented sort of army of
yeah.
artists. And yeah, it was just uncanny how everything was so well executed and improved. I can't think of any example where the work that we did kind of, I was like, oh, they kind of missed the point of that. They always nailed it or made it better, and that's incredible.
Yeah.
Now
And
some
that's a
people might
great
go,
place to
well,
be.
my version was better. There'll
Yeah.
always be those people, but
Hmm.
sometimes you just have to get out your own way and realize you're playing a team sport at a high level,
Yeah.
and that you have to let people do their jobs, and if those people are good, they'll be respectful of the work you've done, and if they're not good, and
Hmm.
a lot of us might have experienced this,
Yeah.
what comes out is like going, you broke what I gave you and it makes no sense and my name's on it now, thank you. Hey,
Yeah.
I don't think they
Yeah.
did it deliberately, but for me it's
Again,
about
again, it's all about the people, isn't it? Right?
it's
So
about the people, it's about the practice,
it's
it's about if the egos are working in the right direction or not. Frequently,
yeah,
sometimes things will get
yeah,
broken
yeah.
because of ego.
Yes, that's true. I think when people don't focus on the end result, right? So
That's what it is.
you have
Exactly.
different obviously you have so many different types of people, but oftentimes, unfortunately, you can end up working with people who think the most important thing in professional life is winning arguments, right?
Yeah, no, exactly, for the sake of them, just because. Yeah.
Whereas any creative person is a
Mm,
problem solver,
mm,
and they see the good that or another solution can bring to the
mm.
problem or to the final product.
Yeah.
So, and that is really that's humbling, and that's the thing that you come up with, even if you don't agree or you
Mm,
didn't come up with that initial idea, but you see it solving the problem, or you see it,
yeah.
like you said, making the thing better.
Mm,
Then your natural instinct as a creative person or problem solver, you kind of go, oh man, yeah, you're right, that's way better, yeah, let's
yeah.
do it that way, right?
But it wouldn't
But
have happened
when you
without
work,
you. You're an important sort of
no, 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 for sure, for
order in
sure,
that
for sure.
chain.
But
So you
what
kind
what
of,
I'm saying is that
mm,
there's other people, when because you mentioned egos,
mm,
where you can go the other way, and the other way when ego is involved is, okay, let's argue, which I'm all for,
mm.
arguing which
No,
solution
of
is
course.
better. But if you're arguing to win the argument, if
Mm,
the end goal is just to win the argument,
mm.
then that is everybody for a waste of time for everybody.
Yeah.
If
I
you're
have a
arguing to
philosophy
find
when we
what is the
encounter
best
those
solution,
situations. Yeah.
yeah,
Those sort of dead ends where neither side can budge or see the other side. It's the third way. It's the fact that, okay, what is your issue with this? What is it that you want? What is it you think it is? And essentially, it's trying to sort of almost restart the conversation with an
yeah,
alternative idea that maybe gives them what they want, but also kind of does what you feel it needs to do.
yeah,
Um, and comedies in particular is one of these things where if you've written what you think is a brilliant joke, and the director reads it and says, "That's not funny. I don't get it," and you can take your time and explain to them to what's funny about it, which 99% of the time kills the joke. It's
yeah,
like dissecting a frog analogy. It's dead by the time you've pulled it apart.
yeah, yeah,
But it's having that conversation and trying to see past the you and me, like you said, and see the goal and say, okay, what's our goal, and how do we achieve our goal, and giving them something that they're not resistant to, that they can't see the nuance or can't see the irony or can't see the thing that's special or funny
Yeah.
about it, and give them something that they feel confident with, and you can go, okay, that works for me, that works for you. Now it can work for both of us.
Yeah.
You know, call it
Yeah.
the third way. The third way. If we can't do that way, we find a third
The
way.
third way. Yeah. I think that's a good way to go about things, for sure. Well, if nothing else, it's a good way to reset a stalemate, right?
Exactly.
And then you can maybe
Yeah, and
you can,
park ego and look at the goal, and that's the thing. It's like you
yeah,
gotta park your ego. I mean, the ego is still this. It's your ego that makes you write. It's your ego that makes you want to direct. It's your ego that makes you want to do anything really creative. It's like I'm doing this. I'm controlling this thing, and this is what I'm seeing. I'm trying to execute it and realize that that's ego.
yeah,
I mean, ego is the ego to create is
right,
inseparable from the ego that can become sort of toxic and opinionated. Um,
yes,
but it's a case of like moderating yourself and going, am I, what's the
hmm,
best way forward? And also, can I get out of my own way here? And can we all get what we
yeah.
want?
Speaking of, to get back on track a little bit, I think it did take a little bit of putting the ego aside or getting out of your own way and letting kind of your curiosity lead to sort of have this transition to just being purely a writer, then a story editor, then going into producing, right? So I think that's very, for me, it's an important lesson in kind of growth,
Mm,
not just in your quote unquote career, but also personally as a professional and as a, a wider skill set, if you want to call it that, is kind of gladly and openly stepping into where sort of the universe is pushing you, right? And your
mm.
curiosity and your excitement is leading you. Because you could have gone like, oh, no, 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 but I'm a writer, right?
Yeah,
And what
I
if
mean,
the, you know what I mean?
writing can be quite
So,
lonely. I mean, gone are the days where you go
of
into a
course.
studio and you sit with a
Yeah.
room of a few other people. Then we do that on Zoom now, but look, it's great when shows
Yes.
do that. I really recommend if you have the budget,
You
to
can get
do that
people
because you
into
get
an actual room. Yeah.
yeah, get them into a room. And yeah, writing can be quite isolating and lonely. And like you said, because you're at the front of a process that then takes sort of years, months, sometimes several years, it can
Yeah.
makes you feel quite divorced from it. So it's
Yes.
nice to sort of be across things as they evolve, and watch things come
Yeah.
together, and see the layers being put on by all of these talented people, that
Yeah.
hopefully are
Totally.
kind of like inspired, get what it's about, and then come back with something even better than you'd
Yeah.
imagined. And
Yeah.
that's really, I think, when really
And
good stuff starts to happen.
yeah, so I think we're naturally kind of going into development right now, right? Because that's really where you can see the full sort of spectrum of this
Yeah.
is you're really literally, putting the seed in the ground, coming up with we're creating something out of nothing very early on, very, very small, and you build up and you build up, and maybe if you're lucky enough and it gets made,
Mm.
then you kind of that's really where you see the full kind of spectrum of things. So, talk to me a little bit maybe about your experience developing different things and how you felt in the process and how it was
um,
different from working on something that's already established, for example.
well, I always say I'm always incredibly optimistic about development, and development is a thing where if
Yeah.
you look at the odds, it's a long
Oh,
odds
insane.
game.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so you kind of have to go in with a bit of love and excitement. You can't go in cynically. Um,
Yes.
so and it's like the fees for development, once, because everything takes longer than everyone thinks, because we're a business
Yes.
full of optimists because you have to
Yeah.
be. um, Development, I really enjoy it, I really do, but it can be like it can be frustrating at points. I have a good track record in it, in the sense that I've got a high sort of conversion quota on things I develop. Been very lucky that a lot of the things I developed
Yeah.
have gone into production.
Can you
But
for those who don't know, can you name a few projects?
okay, Oddbods would probably be one of the bigger ones.
Yeah.
I developed it from the 1 minute sort of sting, kind of the early days of videos on phones, into sort of the juggernaut it became on YouTube. We initially did it with ITV and Disney, in Disney Asia, and we made the first season with them. And they put it online, and it kind of caught fire. It was a perfect storm of sort of the right time to get onto
Yeah.
YouTube.
What year this would have been?
Oh, this would have been. Let me just think. would have been, I think, 2013 when I started work on it,
Mm-hmm.
early 2013,
Yeah.
and we very quickly we got a green light, which was fantastic. So no hanging around for years, and then I've
Good
had
time
another
to start.
project.
Yeah,
Yeah,
good time to start a YouTube channel, 2013.
yeah. Well, yeah. So yeah, that became an absolute sort of juggernaut. Like
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
um kind of episodes on there that I've written and been involved with literally like, 500 million views on just the English language channel alone. It's like holy shit! Like that was
Yeah,
again fortune, good luck. A lot of the people you see being successful in this business have had good luck.
of
You
course.
got to be, I
Yeah,
suppose, resilient enough to hang around until you get hit by the that luck
yeah,
too. And you make your own a bit. You kind of have to go out and network and meet people. You don't make stuff on your own.
yes.
Um, so Oddbuds would be
And
one.
it,
Um, I'm trying to think. There's so many. There's some of which I loved and never got made. Some of which I'm currently in development with, which I hope will get made.
mhm,
Um, uh,
yeah, good luck.
Another one I think recently I developed a TV show for an Abu Dhabi based United Arab Emirates TV show. It was based on they had a series one. It was called Mansour. It was um, a very different show to the show I developed. I kind of took the main characters from the first series, which was like this sort of 3D show, and I revamped it and I turned it into sort of this big science fiction allegory about a boy who creates the world's first sentient AI by
Mhm.
accident, sticks it in his sister's doll as a gift for the birthday, and this thing figures out quickly, I'm really smart. What the hell am I doing inside this thing? Who put me in here? And so when he escapes, he decides to kind of make his creator's life hell. So it just became this really sort of interesting story engine for exploring our relationship with technology, our relationship with the online
Yeah.
world, and it was set sort of in the future, and it did very well actually. I think it sold to the BBC and was aired last year, and nothing from UAE, I think, for that sort of animation or kids has ever sort of sold to like a big broadcaster like the BBC. And yeah, apparently did incredibly well on their iPlayer, which was kind of satisfying. And that was fun. That was
Nice.
kind of like I have a big interest in AI and technology and where it's all taking us.
Yeah.
So that was another show. Another show I think was about 5 years, and well, I think I developed it it took about a year to develop, and 5 years to finance. Was a big IP that was from the Sony Animation. It was features. It was open season. Got those. I think they made four
Yeah.
movies, two of which are good, two of which maybe not so good. But then again, everything's objective.
Yeah.
So
We're quite familiar. We're quite familiar with those.
yeah. So
Myself was a fan. Yeah.
yeah. So I suppose yeah, the Space Chickens in Space, another show I developed,
Yeah.
which was for Disney. That was a lot of fun. Yeah, so I've been spent. I also sort of I've written some live action sitcoms as well that have done very well here in Ireland. But the
Hmm.
jokes are kind of quite about us and don't
Right.
necessarily always.
Yes.
We like to make jokes about ourselves that no one else will get. It's like an in joke. You know.
Yeah.
But then there's lots of stuff that I've loved that just unfortunately doesn't find the pieces it needs to
Right.
keep going. You know.
Right. Well, it takes time. Speaking of space chickens in space, and you were talking with Rita, right? Last
That's
week.
right. Yeah, Rita developed. She was yeah, one of the producers, the execs on the show. She
Yeah.
developed. I think
Yeah.
Tim even
So
came up with a great name, which is when
yes.
name.
And we were talking about sort of these inflection points and moments where you sort of pivot, and she was telling us a story that it also started out wanting to be a writer and then ended up in theater, and that was a great school, and then kind of went back to writing a little bit, and then sort of in the reporting, and then as she was working as a reporter, she was at this like L&M show, some licensing show somewhere in New York, I think she was saying. And she was walking around the stands because everybody was snowed in and they couldn't get to the actual venue. It was a cool story, but she got there and she saw like this trinket, like a keychain or something. And she went like, "Oh, you should listen to the episode from last week. The story is really great." I'm not doing it justice, but basically there was like this internal voice kicked in, like, you should turn this into a show. And she went like, oh my
Mm.
God, yes, I should. And then from that moment on, and until it kind of became something, it was 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah, I think she's told me
So
that story as well. Yeah, it's not for the
yeah,
faint of heart. That's for sure.
yes.
Yeah.
So it's definitely you need to, going back to the beginning of the conversation, it's the resilience and the patience
Mm,
of it. And I think also when like reality hits you, when you realize like, oh my God, it doesn't really, people who don't know how the industry functions, they think like all you need is a great idea, right? If you come up with a good idea, then Disney's going to come and then they're going to give you a lot of millions,
mm.
many, many millions of something because you have a brilliant idea. Well, isn't that cool?
Yeah.
People who don't understand how the industry
Yeah. And
functions,
you'll
right?
live happily ever after, and that's it. Yeah.
Yes,
And it's
exactly.
not
And
like
you live
that. Well, might
happily
be
ever
for very
after,
rare
right?
cases. Yeah.
But and you're looking at all these people, I don't know, people who created this show or that show, and especially in live action, maybe less nowadays, but you
Mm,
got your Jerry Seinfelds and Paul Schaefer's and whoever, right? And when you realize and understand, like, oh, wait a minute, no, it's first of all, it's an incredibly long process
mm,
in animation, at least. I think with anything, and the more you learn about the industry, the more you understand that, even years ago, I was reading about the story of how The Wolf of Wall Street got made.
mhm.
And even Martin Scorsese was with Leonardo DiCaprio attached. He was struggling to raise the financing for that
Yeah.
and get somebody. Obviously, it's bigger budgets. It's a big thing. Da da da
Still,
da
the
da.
money,
Mar-
it's one
Mar-
of the ugliest, horrible, most horrible parts of the business. Like,
yeah,
is
but
the
even
financing.
he couldn't raise the money for it. So like he went off and did like Shutter Island because that was sort of packaged
More of
already,
a
and then he came
studio
back
movie. Yeah.
and then he did Wolf of Wall Street. Anyway, so even at that level, it's still very complicated. It gets time. A lot of stuff doesn't get made. A lot of really
Mm,
beautiful, great, wonderful things don't get made. And this reminds me of a Sylvester Stallone interview from many many years ago. People were asking him like, what is the most important thing if you want to succeed in this business? And that's what he said, like, guts. You have to have guts. There's so many wonderful
all right.
artists, there's so many wonderful artists whose work nobody's ever going to see
Mm, I
because
agree.
they can't take rejection, because they can't they don't have a thick skin, because
Yeah.
they don't have the
Sometimes
patience,
it's just
because
economics, though. It's economics in itself. This business is not kind, I think, to people that come from sort of lower socio-economic backgrounds.
oh,
There's
for sure,
obstacles.
yeah,
You
yes,
know, so yeah, and I mean, it's not just you gave up. I mean, there is that. I mean, you do need to be bullishly kind of resilient. But it's the fact that yeah, it requires so much time outside of the real world in order to get yourself ready to
yeah,
break it. So I was very lucky in the sense that I was able to kind of get into sort of professional organizations and work professionally and learn my craft. I mean, I was certainly not the same person, writer or creative as I was when I started, and I'm just glad that they hired that dumb kid or that young dumb 20
yeah,
something year old and gave me an opportunity. And I was able to, so I suppose through sort of determination, competence, and desire and desperation not to fail, that I was able to sort of cling in there and evolve and grow as an artist, and as a creative person. Um, so I do think, yeah, no, luck is a big part of it too. But I mean, I think in the last sort of 4 years, I've known some very good, very talented friends who just haven't had that luck, and economics and family situations and
yeah,
whatnot has forced them out. And I think we're looking at you know, an awful lot of that right now. For example, the US business right before they were going to unionize, and all the money that they made for all of these people, all the streamers, they get tossed in
hmm
the bin. They're all gone. Their industry is completely broken, and all of these decades of talent and experience and invaluable kind of experience and talent. They have to move, find somewhere else to do, or just get another job. And it's yeah, it's
yeah,
it's very, it's made me kind of quite angry and
it's tough.
sad. at the way that
Yes.
things have turned
So,
out. I feel lucky that I'm still working.
th yeah, this leads me to a question I ask everybody.
Mm.
So why don't you quit?
I'm too old.
What keeps you going? I don't
um,
know.
I,
There's nothing
I'm still
there's
lucky.
nothing else.
Yeah, I'm not, I don't
There's
think
nothing
I'm
else
ever
you'd like
really
to
going
do.
to quit. There might come the point where I'm just I'll take on less. I don't think I'll ever stop working per se.
Yeah,
I might maybe I'll start writing books. I've always wanted
yeah,
to write books, but again, it's again finding the time, paying your bills, paying the mortgage. When you've got a family, you've got to sort of sometimes take
yes,
what's in front of you. I mean, I have done some sort of
yes,
speculative things as well. I mean, I have my own company, the development company, Hot Shot Films,
yeah,
and last year, well, this year, I should say, earlier on in the summer, after 7 years of trying to get the project up and running and off the ground, we finally got my first live action feature film as a
yeah,
producer into production, which was good. So yeah, you kind of just, I suppose, you have to keep on pushing. You have to fight and swim like your life depends on it. I think. Um,
yeah,
yeah, it's a tough business, but I enjoy it, and yeah, like I said, after everything that's happened in the last few years, I don't take anything I do for granted. I feel very, very grateful.
yes,
I'm always kind of looking to
yeah.
adapt to what's coming.
That's what I wanted to say as well. Is I think gratitude is a big part of it
Mm,
because just just having the chance to do the work, you
mm,
know, putting aside, if you go back to, I know oftentimes I go back to like 13-year-old me, 12-year-old me,
mm,
because, looking at all these things and going, I wonder how that is made. I could maybe do that, Um, and now I've spent 20, I don't know, 23 or something years kind of doing it with
mm,
breaks and with a lot of adversity and things like that. But I did get the chance to actually make some things.
mm,
And because of the hardships and how hard it is to get there, sometimes you're just exasperated, like like you're done, you're tired.
mm.
Um, but I think having the chance to actually be doing the work, sometimes you need to remind yourself, like kick yourself
I
in
know
the
you
shin
do, and you can
and
get
sort
sucked
of
into
go like,
the,
hey,
yeah,
hey,
the heavy
look,
stuff,
you're
and you're like
actually
you might be
enjoy it.
enjoying something. You might be
Yeah,
enjoying
like
something. Maybe
enjoy
you're,
it,
yeah,
right?
and you might be working with people who you don't necessarily feel that there's a good synergy there, or there.
Yeah,
Not every creative relationship or situation is perfect. um,
for
and
sure.
sometimes you can
Yeah,
forget. Yeah, but I always say that when you are in those situations, like the best situations I've always worked in were the ones where I think we all remember how lucky we are to be doing what we're doing, and therefore it just
yeah,
makes for a nicer atmosphere. It's more respectful
yeah,
atmosphere for people, where people
yeah,
feel valued rather than the auditioning monkeys
totally.
terrified of failing.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
yeah.
That's it. Terrified. I think you hit the nail on the head there because I
Mm,
think when you work, man, this is going to sound very kind of hokey and but I think when you make decisions out of love, like what we were talking about, versus out of fear, right?
mm,
So what we were talking about earlier is like, how can we make this better? Everybody chime in. I don't agree, or I agree, or whatever. Let's argue about that. But it's about making this thing better. So
mm,
you're making those decisions and you're having those arguments out of love.
mm,
Oftentimes, and I've had this personal experience where you have people making decisions out of fear. What
mhm,
if we drop the ball here? What if we fail here? What if we
mm,
make a mistake? What if we, right? So you straight out of the gate, you have all these limitations, and that atmosphere is really not conducive to
mm.
not
Yeah,
just creative things in general, but it's not conducive to growth. It's not conducive
yeah.
to random accidents. It's not
Mm.
conducive to all these little bits
No,
and
it becomes
pieces and
kind of a
tricks
cascade.
that
It
bring in the
becomes smothering.
magic.
Yeah, it becomes smothering. Look, I'm not saying that all decisions made in fear are bad, but normally, if that's your default for your creative decision making, like if you're writing
Yeah.
for somebody else and what they want in their head and not for yourself, then you're going to find that you're not enjoying yourself. You kind of have to get aligned with people. So you kind of have to, I think, creating from a perspective of excitement, enthusiasm, and love. But once you operate from a position of fear, you will start to make decisions that kind of reflect the outcome of those fears and those. Even
Yeah.
as a non outside the creative realm, I would say making decisions out of love over fear will definitely make your life better.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. I think it's just a little bit in IRL, you have to work on yourself, right?
Oh,
So
constantly, yeah,
your greatest enemy in a
yeah.
corporate environment, which most productions are.
I, I, I also
In a
think
corporate environment,
overconfidence in your process as well can sometimes not allow you to sit. You kind of have to have that rigor, that internal rigor, that like, can I be better?
yeah,
I find you find when some people, when they have some success, the overconfidence kicks in,
mm-hmm,
and that rigor
yeah,
that brought them to that excellent place kind of disappears, and they'll find that the difficult sophomore film, or the fact that you kind of have to be humble while grateful, but also you kind of have to sort of love what you're doing. And I think
yeah,
if you can get those things right, and you can create creative environments that kind of encourage that in other people, then you go great work, and you actually have a much better time working with people.
yeah, exactly. And I think you can kind of tell when
Mm.
you're watching certain things. I will always take a project that feels alive and fun and engaging, but not very polished, over a project that feels really, really polished, technically
Yeah,
speaking,
what do you do?
but it's flat, but it's completely flat, right?
Yeah,
So,
no, of
and
course.
there's
Yeah.
tons of these examples, and you can really tell, like, obviously it's clear where the kind of what this team was missing and that team was missing and so on, and it
Mm.
could be budgets and it could be all these different things, but it's also priorities. What do we focus on? What do we really, what do we prioritize, and how do we make these decisions, right?
Well,
So,
I always say that writing is the nucleus of those things. Writing is the spark that sets
mhm.
everything else alight. And I think we've all seen those projects where essentially the spark's been beaten out of them. Everything else seems to be right, looks great, sounds good, but somehow just doesn't kind of captivate the imagination
Yeah,
of the viewer because it lacks
yeah,
that spark. And that spark
yeah,
is something you
exactly.
keep by being happy, and not so overconfident that you think everything you do is great. It's just still
And
having
just
that
being
rigor.
grateful. Yeah,
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 totally. And
and
listening to
just
smart people around you, and taking the
oh,
best
for
idea
sure.
and getting out
Yeah,
your own
yeah.
way when you need to, you know?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. We were also talking about, because this is quite a, like a big topic for me personally, but we're talking with somebody. I forget who it was specifically, but in the podcast, and I think what we're talking about, I think you can really tell. I think when you do create that environment for the
Mm,
team to work in, you can. There's certain things that you watch and you kind of go, oh, that was nice, that was good.
mm,
But there's certain other things that are really magical, that really have that extra
mm.
X factor,
Yeah,
whatever, chemical X thing, where the first thought that pops into your head, especially if you have like affinity towards comedy and things like that, you go, man, they must have had so much fun working
yeah.
on this. If you think, man, they must have had so much fun working, I'm not, maybe it's not true. Maybe it was a
But
nightmare.
fun doesn't necessarily mean easy either, you know?
Exactly.
That's
No,
the
no,
thing,
no. Fun
you
is
know?
not easy. No,
But the
fun is
failure
not
doesn't
easy,
have
but
to be catastrophic. It can be,
yeah.
okay, we tried it, it didn't work. What have we got?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know?
Fun doesn't mean easy. Fun,
Yeah,
could be long hours, a lot of work, a lot of
yeah,
things scrapped and thrown in the
yeah,
bin and so on. But you
yeah.
can just tell, and specifically, if you just the types of gags, the types of things that people put into certain things. If you're thinking about humor, and you go like, they could have not done that,
Mm,
right? But it's there, and wouldn't ruin or make or break the sequence. But it's there like a little extra thing, and you go, man, they really went into detail. They really put some love into this because there's
yeah.
that little gag there, you know,
Yeah. I call it like
that's
a
what.
moment of observed truth that's surprising and beautiful and doesn't feel like
Yeah.
it's cliched. It's those things you feel like it feels authentic, you know?
Yes.
It's
Yes. Yeah.
yeah.
Exactly. There's a there's one of my favorite ever moments in Family Guy. They do a lot of this. There are a lot of brilliant people writing this and coming up with all these gags and all these setups. But sometimes they would do these really kind of offbeat little tiny gags, and I find those are the best. Which is, they're not really too high concept, not really complicated long sequences. So there's this one episode, I forget exactly what it was about, but there's like two groups fighting, and they meet in this park. I think they're trying to tear down a statue or something. I forget what it was exactly. but they're about to clash, these two groups, and somebody yells, "Stop!" And somebody in the crowd, like a third character, like an extra, we call it, just mumbles under his nose, just goes, "Collaborate and listen." That's the guy.
Such a
Right?
throwaway. It's so thrown
Yeah.
away, but you
So
immediately get the reference. And
yeah,
again,
and
it's,
then he
it's the
kind of
execution.
and then he kind of just looks around like, "Sorry guys, but this is like," he just doesn't say it. He doesn't say it, but he
Yeah.
acts like, "Oh, sorry, we were doing something very serious. Okay, let's go back to fighting." Right? So it's such a small
Yeah.
little
Now they're
thing,
masters
and
of like the throwing gags in the tiniest of spots and saying yes
yeah,
and
and
to
if
take
that
the risk.
wasn't there, it wouldn't ruin the episode, wouldn't ruin
No.
the sequence. It was full of really like the pillars, the bones, the big bones of it were there, right? But this is just like a little that boom, that little sprinkle. You got like, man, these guys
Yeah. You
really
go.
have it
They
good
had
good at
fun doing that because there's no point to it.
exactly.
And you chuckled
Yes, yes,
and they put it in. And
yes,
that's yeah.
exactly. Exactly. And it's just like spot on, no
Yeah.
notes, like such a
Like if you look at
masterful.
the South guys, like Park guys, who I love, I think they're just creative geniuses. The sort of pipeline they developed, the continued satire in a world that's almost impossible to satire, they still managed to do it. There's some really great interviews about sort of their writing process, but also just watching them
Yeah,
perform their writing. Oh my god, to see
yeah,
them sort of do the voices of all the characters and laughing at each other, literally just like two buddies going to work to try and make the other one pee his pants every day.
yeah,
Yeah, God, I look at them and I go, God, that just sounds like it's a riot, and they get paid
yeah,
very well
yes,
to do that, and yeah, they
yeah.
deserve every penny as far as
You
I'm
get just a
concerned.
little bit jealous.
Oh,
Oftentimes,
yeah,
after,
envious, I
uh,
suppose, is better. Jealousy's bad. Envy's good or better.
envy, good envy. There's a good time.
Yeah,
Is that an expression in English? White envy? Does that exist in English?
white envy. No, I don't
White
know.
envy. So in Russian, for example, there's a term white envy, which means that I envy you, but not in a bad way.
Oh, I see.
So
Yeah, yeah,
I wish you all the best,
yeah.
but I would love to
Whereas
be in a
jealousy
similar
is like,
position.
I want your shit and I
Yeah,
want you to die. I'm going to steal your life.
yeah, exactly, yeah. So you would call that
Yeah,
like you would say like a white lie,
yeah,
right? That was a little
yeah,
white lie. It wasn't a
yeah.
malicious thing that I was doing.
Exactly.
It
Yeah.
was a
No,
white.
I like
It was
that.
a
Yeah,
white lie.
white
It
envy.
was a white lie to
Yeah,
protect you or shield you for
yeah,
something.
of
So it's
course.
like it's white envy.
All my
It's
lies are
like
white, even the bad ones.
yeah. So
Yeah.
oftentimes I watch Family Guy, and they'll do something like this, which is so layered but yet so simple, like this Vanilla Ice joke, for example.
Mm.
And I would just go, just thinking in the back of my head, one day I would love to be in that room. One
Mm.
day it would be so
And
fun, exactly like what we're talking about now, right?
yeah.
Wouldn't it be great? But then they'll do something that is so brilliant that I go, there's nothing else for me to do. I can't
Yeah.
contribute to this.
Well, the
So
rooms
good.
rotation, people come in and
you
out.
know
It's just about getting into the right environment
I
and
know.
space,
But
Like
it's
I
like
worked in rooms that have been quite sort of anxious because the culture is anxious and it's never as much
yeah,
fun. And I don't think you get, particularly writing comedy, if everyone is on edge, trying to outcompete each other, they're not working together. They're kind of working for their own means and their own ends. So
competing. Yeah,
culturally,
exactly.
like
Yeah,
what I did is I went in and I changed it all around to make sure everyone was having fun. And what we got were just infinitely better options, and everyone was relaxed,
oh,
and the
for sure,
pressure wasn't there in the same way. So
for
you
sure,
definitely get
for
better work that
sure.
way.
Yeah, yeah. Listen, one last thing. This is also something that I ask everybody. So this community is called the Toon Room. If you had to pin a note on the door of the Toon Room for new people walking into this,
Mhm.
let's say they're walking in, let's use it as a metaphor. They're walking into the community, but they're walking into the business, right? Maybe they're experienced, maybe they're not, maybe they're just stepping into this. What would you put on that note?
Abandon all hope, all ye that enter. No, I'm just kidding. I would say, I would say, innovate. We're in a time of great change in the industry. I think AI
Right.
is a bogeyman. I think AI will never replace artists. It will never replace ideas. It might replace sweat. It might actually allow smaller players um, to budget and manufacture things they'd never have access to. So I think it would
Could
democratize
level
your
the playing
industry.
field a little bit. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it will level the playing field. It's all about how you use those tools. Basically, if you make AI slop and that stuff is garbage, that's fine. Go and make your garbage. No one's going to want to see it. It's going to disappear into the infinite ether of internet garbage that no one looks at. But don't be afraid of it as a tool. It might be the thing that actually gives you an advantage. Don't outsource your thinking to it. Don't outsource your creativity to it. Outsource your sweat. Outsource the stuff that you think you can do faster and better and ideate quicker. You can change your mind more. My advice is AI is not the boogeyman, and that boogeyman that they're selling us that will come in and make a feature film top to bottom using algorithms and machines. It's going to make shit. It's going to make stuff that hasn't got humanity in it, and the audience will quickly see what it is, and they won't watch it.
yeah.
It
Well,
will destroy itself by its inadequacies.
McDonald's just tried, right?
Yeah. So yeah, is it going to change things? Yes, it is, and I don't think in the longer term, people using it well and properly will make wonderful imaginative things that would never have been financed under the current model, because the current model is risk averse and expensive. So I don't think it's the end of things. It's the same way when I think 3D started to make its emergence into the business. There was very much what I would call a Luddite reactionary pushback to it. And I think looking at 2D and 3D now, I don't care which one is which. They both have a right to exist in their own way. It really is how good they are in the hands of their artists. So I'd say for young people coming into the industry, it was hard. It's gotten harder. Make it easier. Be independent. Find communities, this is one. Find communities of like-minded people to make stuff together. Form small nucleuses and figure out how to access audience. The gatekeepers are gone. They're dead. There's a new, broad, frightening horizon out there everyone's trying to figure out. My advice is keep doing what you love, harness the tools to be productive and to take risks and to tell stories, because the world needs them.
That is great. I have nothing to add. I love that. Thank you so very much. That's perfect. I usually take the name of the episode out of this answer, and I like outsource your sweat. I think that's
So abandon all hope. Yeah, there you go. So that's my soapbox moment. But I genuinely believe it. They're not going to get rid of us. We are absolutely necessary.
I agree. Yeah. Alan, my friend, thank you so very much for your time, this conversation. Steffi, if you're around, thank you for being here. If you,
hey, Steffi,
would you like to ask Alan anything before we go?
Well, I just wanted to point out, I mean, that what he was saying about how you have this live action film now being produced, right? Like there is still hope and things are happening. And I think people need to keep trying. And that's, like Alan's an example of that, is that he's just kept going and he's gotten projects and very exciting projects going this year, which if you listen to anybody, that shouldn't be happening, right? So I'm just really, happy that you shared all of that, because I think people aren't hearing that things are still going, and things are. You just have to keep hopeful, and you have to keep, nobody likes anybody who's cynical and bitter, and Alan is not. And that's also very, indicative of how much he's working, is that he's always kept a really positive attitude. So thank you. So that's just more of a comment, no real question.
Thanks, Steffi. I could say the same about you.
Yeah. Thank you. That's a great comment. Thank you, Steffi. Anyway, again, Alan, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for your time. I'll see you in the community. And for everybody who will be listening to this, thank you for listening. And we'll see you in the next one.
Pleasure.
All right.
See you in the community.
Ciao. Ciao. Bye.
Bye-bye.